everyone, it's Desiree, and I am here with another Gina K Stamp TV kit, and it's called Hearts and Flowers. So let's look what's inside the kit. Of course, we get the awesome container. I love these containers. I use them for storage, gilding flakes. They're perfect for gilding flakes. And this is everything that comes in the kit, just the little tiny cover. You get 24 pieces of cardstock. You get 2 of the red velvet. You get 2 of the passionate pink. You get 2 of the sweet mango. 2 of the wild dandelion. You get some layering white. You get 3 black. You get 2 jelly bean green, 2 fresh asparagus, 2 blue lagoon, 2 wild wisteria, and then you also get 3 of the heavyweight of her cardstock, and her cardstock is an absolute dream. You get 2 6x8 stamp sets. This one, with all of the beautiful hearts, is called You Have My Heart stamp set. It comes with just beautiful floral designs and filigree hearts, at least that's what I call them. And then you also get the coordinating dies that go with that stamp set. The other stamp set's called Tropical Blooms, and there's just some beautiful, you've got a little mixture of everything. You've got some layering stamps, and you've also got that beautiful rose bouquet or stem that comes in there. And with the die sets, you do get the dies for all those, plus you get the dies for happy, hello, and thinking. And then you have the coordinating sentiments that can go with that you can build upon. So that's everything that comes in the kit. So let's start with card number 1. So you can see we're going to start with a black base. And I'm using my anti-static tool. I couldn't find my little tiny buddy there. So I'm using my other one, and it seems to be working. I'm going to use my Versamark ink, and I'm going to stamp this down onto my piece of black cardstock. Now, the black cardstock that I am using is from Michael's, the Recollections collection, 65-pound weight. I use her cardstock for the card bases. So I stamped that down, and I'm going to grab my gold Recollections embossing powder, and we're going to heat set that. So it's really going to stand out. Kind of doing something a little bit different with this card. When I saw this stamp set in one of her videos, she inspired me. She used a lot of colors when it came to her coloring with colored pencils. But I kind of wanted to do it just like a monochrome. Very few colors. So the color I'm actually going to pull in is white. I'm cleaning off my cardstock with all the powder, and I used a piece of Swiffer. So I'm going to use my white Prismacolor, and I'm actually also going to use some Gamsol, and I'm going to use one of the Spectrum Noir blending stumps, and that's how I store my Gamsol. It was just a glass container that I had, and I put in just a regular sponge, put it in there, and then I poured the Gamsol in there. So I can always keep it covered. Even though it's odorless, you really shouldn't be breathing this in. And of course, as we're coloring, we're kind of putting our faces down there. So we don't need to breathe deep. That would be bad. So I can always just real quick take my cover off and dip my blending stump down into that to pick up the Gamsol. And you can see I can blend this up. So I start in the color, and then I actually pull it up. So, and that's how this whole image is going to be colored and shaded, just with the white Prismacolor, and I'm going to blend it out with the Gamsol and the blending stump. So I'm not covering the whole piece, even for the leaves. I'm only going into the center because I want the deepest color towards the center of the leaves, and I want the lighter ends to go to the tips. One thing I did notice, and I'm sure others have too, you can see in that one right there, I'm actually, because of the Gamsol, I'm going too hard over the embossing line. So it will kind of shift and give it just a little bit of color. I was okay with that, but then I just learned from that little tiny error there, which I kind of like the color it was doing. You can see I'm rubbing that over to bring back the shine for the embossing powder. It will go through and destroy your embossing line. So you just want to be careful when you are using the Gamsol. It is a mineral spirits, so it is a solvent. So it will, you know, cut through things. But you can see the different shading in there. But I kind of liked it. So this is one of those happy accidents. Wasn't too upset with it. I'm going to pull in my Lawn Fawn Stitch rectangle die, and I'm going to cut out this panel. And then I'm just grabbing my white Prismacolor pencil again, just to give it a little bit of shadow towards the bottom, because I didn't go right up to the edge with the die. I'm going to grab the sentiment. The main one is going to be happy, and then I added on the top, you make me, and then I added another word, happy. So it's going to say, you make me happy, happy. And we should all be happy. Whenever we can smile, we should always try to smile, even though there are some tough things that don't allow us to. But a smile to me is kind of strange, but it's a good medicine. So I'm grabbing my Liquitex white ink, and I'm going to add some water to that with my distress sprayer, being careful not to spray too hard so it goes all over. Yes, ask me how I know that. And I'm just going to create some white splatters. Now, what's good with this, while it's an opaque white, it is going to dry back. So it's not going to be this vivid, bright white that you see here. I'm just using a scrap piece of cardstock just to cover the image. I don't want it to completely cover the image, but I was okay with it going over the sentiment. And then I would just wait. I let that air dry. I'm going to prop this up on some fun foam. Please know that double-sided tape, I don't know where I got that. I am so sorry. It's about 1 inch wide. I believe I got it at Joann's, but I propped that up. So that's card number 1. For card number 2, you can see we're going to pull in some Altenew inks because, yes, I did get the collection, and I am in love with them. So we're going to play with the layering stamps. So the colors that I'm using here for the flowers, for the light base, I'm going to use, I'm thinking here, Mountain Mist. I'm so sorry about that. Awkward pause. So I'm going to, and there's 2 sizes of these flowers, of course, a large and a small. So the base is in Mountain Mist. For the details of the flower, the veins, that's going to be in Lagoon. And these are very easy to layer. You don't have to be perfect. It's okay if you go off. What I do love about the Altenew inks is they blend out. So even though they may look splotchy, they absolutely level out. And you'll see that at the end when we do the showcase. For the stems, in the center, I used emerald. So now I'm going to work on the leaves. I love these leaves. For some reason, I look at these leaves and it just says Miami, Florida. I'm not quite sure, very tropical. These are 3 layers as well. And for these layers, for the first, I used frayed leaf. And for the second that I'm stamping now, I used forest glades. And then for the final one, which goes along the edges of the leaf, I used evergreen. And again, these layering stamps, you don't have to be absolutely perfect. They are very forgiving, which is what I like in a layering stamp. So I'm going to use, it comes, of course, with the coordinating dies. We're going to cut those out. And now we're going to play with the panel. So I used a Lawn Fawn stitched rectangle to cut out the white base, and then for the black base, I just cut that 4 1/8 by 5 1/4. And then this white panel that I used my Lawn Fawn die is just going to have that little bit of black edge going around it, and I'm going to adhere that. I'm going to grab the Hello sentiment, and I'm going to use my VersaFine Black Onyx ink for that. And I'm just going to stamp that down in the bottom right-hand corner, because you'll actually see the floral design that we create is going to come up. It's going to crawl up the card, because you all know I just can't do anything normal. It's got to have movement, so to speak. I don't know. It's just my mind. So now I'm just playing with the placement. Y'all didn't need to watch that because that's very painful. And now I'm adhering down the leaves because I know pretty much where they're going to go in place. And then I'm going to adhere the flowers. Some will be propped up and some will be put down flat onto the card. And you can see how this creeps up and around. And of course, yes, I go off the edge. I have to do that. I did use a piece of fun foam to prop this panel up, and I'm going to use her, Sweet Mango for the card base, which of course is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 top folding. I grabbed my Nuvo Jewel Drops, and this one is Sea Breeze. And I just put it on the end of the stems inside of the flower. And what's absolutely awesome is the Nuvo Drops actually draw up that ink. So they actually are not as clear as what they are around the hello. They kind of took a different color. And again, you'll see that in the showcase. So on to card number 3, we're going to have some fun with smooshing with some of the Distress inks. And yes, I pulled in my Penny Black antique frame dies. I'm in love with these frame dies. So I'm grabbing the Sentiment, and suddenly all of the love songs were about you. I think that is just absolutely gorgeous. So I stamped that on a piece of scrap white in my VersaFine Black Onyx. And now I'm going to stamp the guitar. So I'm going to use my Versamark ink to stamp the guitar because I want to use my Ranger Liquid Platinum. That is, you've all heard me say this before, it is my absolute favorite embossing powder when it comes to the color. There is a good comparison to it. It's a second comparison, and that would be the Recollection Champagne. It is very close and similar, but the Liquid Platinum is just absolutely gorgeous from Ranger. And I cut those out. For the guitar, I used the coordinating die, and I used a smaller of the antique frame from Penny Black for the Sentiment. So I have a small piece of craft mat here, and I'm just smooshing down a couple of my Distress inks. I am using peacock feathers and tumbled glass, and I'm just lightly pushing down my cardstock, and this is Canson XL watercolor paper that I'm using, and I heat set that to dry. I like the drips. I like the difference going on in there. And now I grabbed my Evergreen Bough, and I'm just really quickly, I don't want it to smoosh too much. I want the droplets. I want those specks to come in. So I have my little tiny section there. I'm going to use a larger of the antique frame from Penny Black. And now I'm just playing with some finger daubers. You'll see that I'm pulling out a couple, I'm pulling out one, and we're going to change our mind, and we're going to put that back in. So I'm going to go around the edges with the, I believe this is my tumbled glass. I just wanted a hint of that color to come through. Or no, I'm sorry, I believe this is my peacock feathers because it's a little dark. It's not as pale. Sorry about that. So I just went around the edges, and I'm going to do the same with the Sentiment. Now this one I'm going to go a little bit heavier because I want that sentiment to really come off, just to stick out just a little bit more. I'm going to pull in my vintage photo. I like mixing the colors, so I'm going to go around the guitar so that that can pop off the page. And then I'm actually going to go back around the sentiment and the larger panel where I did the ink smushing. And again, it's just going to give that different hue. The brown mixing with that blue kind of makes it look antique. It's a very interesting look, at least I thought. So I'm going to use my double-sided foam tape to prop up this panel because it's not too large, and I'm going to use her Blue Lagoon. It doesn't look, on my camera it looks very blue. It's got a green tint to it. I guess, my colors are kind of going off there. So I set my panel, of course, cockeyed a little bit because, well, I'm a little cockeyed. And then I set my panel in place, and now I'm going to position the guitar. And I'm going to have that come over the sentiment just a little bit. I'm going to use a section of my dimensionals, and then I'm going to use some of them to prop that up. I do like the Stampin' Up! Dimensionals. They are, they're a nice thickness, and when I do my next paper pumpkin, I will be giving you an announcement, so just make sure you listen to that. But it's good news. It's absolutely good news. And that was card number 3. So for card number 4, I'm going to pull in my festive berries. I have only very few. A lot of my distressings are the small cubes. I think they're great. I have a few of the larger ones. They're mainly a lot of the colors that I use most. And I'm just going to drop this color I made of my own splashy type puddle here. And I'm just dropping the festive berries using an aqua pen, a watercolor pen, right down into there. And I'm going to kind of try to form the shape below. And now I'm just going to add some splatters coming off of that. And this probably would have been cool, just a panel, just like that. But no, you're going to see me cut into it. So I'm going to grab one of the smaller of the hearts with, I call it like a filigree, and I'm going to stamp right over that, because I want that ink to come through it. I'm going to use my clear embossing powder from Recollections to go over my Fursifying, and I was okay if some of the clear embossing powder went onto the ink as well, so I didn't make sure it was fully dry. I heat set that, and now I'm going to use the branch. She has this beautiful branch that's part of her stamp set, and I'm going to stamp this down onto my panel. And you can see I'm not able to get to the edge because I wanted this to come across the card panel, but I didn't want the card panel to be small. So I actually found in my stash, it's amazing what you do when you clean and what you find, a black Ranger embossing pen. So I figured, you know what, let's give this a try. So I extended the branch, making it a little bit wider, and this worked beautifully. So I have a clear, I have a couple clear, and I have a black embossing pen. So how excited am I? So I covered that with my clear embossing powder as well, and then I'm going to pull in the 2 birds. And she happened to have these 2 birds, and the way they were positioned, they were actually facing each other. So they weren't facing in the same direction. So it looks like the 2 little birds are looking at each other. I know, I'm sentimental. I'm a fool. And I'm using the black embossing pen just to fill in the areas because I was kind of going over that powder as well. I hadn't heat set it yet because I wanted to get those birds in and the sentiment as well. And I used You Have My Heart. And I'm going to use my clear embossing powder on that as well. And then all of that's just going to be heat set. So I have this bold black on there. The wonky die, of course, has to make an appearance in almost every one of my videos. I've cut that out. And then I'm piercing a hole in the top of the heart. And I'm going to pierce a hole at a section on the branch. So this heart, as you can see, is going to hang down from that branch. So very carefully, you can see I'm struggling here with the with the needle that I use because I didn't want to tear the heart, but I'm using my black and white twine that I get from Paper Mart. I love their twine. And I probably should have kept it a single layer on the heart because it is kind of overpowering. But the card's real easy to remake with just one layer, but I kind of liked, all of the dimension it was adding. I cut another piece so that I can wrap it around and tie a bow on top of this heart. I will not give you that pain to watch the bow. And I'm going to use a glue dot to secure that down onto the card. I didn't want it to swing because I didn't want the heart to flip because I didn't make it double-sided. I grabbed a piece of fun foam again, and I put that to the back of my panel, and I'm using some of her jelly bean green, and my card base is 4 1/4, top folding 5 1/2. Did you like how I said that? Yeah, so 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, top folding. Went a little bit cockeyed there. So for card number 5, I actually pulled out my Zig real brush markers. Haven't pulled those out in a while. And I used 2 of the dies of the antique frames from Penny Black to create a frame. I'm using my vintage photo because we want to distress around the edges of it. And I'm pulling in a piece of my burlap because I want that, I'm going to create like a shelf in this. And I just had to use this beautiful, just a beautiful vase of wildflowers sitting in it. So I'm going to use my VersaFine Black Onyx ink, and we want to stamp that down. And I just wanted to make sure I went into the center. I wasn't quite sure where I was going, if I was going to keep a border around it, if I was going to use the die. Wasn't quite sure, so I figured, okay, this is a scrap piece. This is the Canson XL watercolor. And I'm just putting a little bit of color down, and then I'm coming in with my aqua brush, and I'm just moving it. Again, this is not anything intricate. It's nothing detailed, very basic watercoloring. I am far from a watercolorist. I like the smooshing, I like the backgrounds, I like just dropping colors in. I like my watercolors to do the work for me. I don't want to do the work. Yeah, we're all like that. Come on. Although I know some people that are wonderful watercolorists. So at the end, I'm going to be giving you an announcement, and hopefully you will check out a channel. So I'm just filling in all of the little tiny areas, not covering the whole area, just putting it in some and then letting the water pull out those colors. All the colors that I used, I will have them listed below in the description. Then I'm taking another piece. Yep, we used a lot of cardstock in this one. And I'm using my tumbled glass because I wanted a pale blue. And I'm just putting in a background. I am not worried about the blending. The blending could be absolutely chaotic, and you can see it is. I'm going to use my spritzer, and I'm going to use a paper towel to pick that up just to give it some texture. I'm going to cut out that panel, and I was able to cut through my burlap as well with those dies. I've used my double-sided foam tape for the main frame that I created, and again, I'm going to be using her Sweet Mango for my 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 top folding card base, which will be folding to the side. And with that other panel that I distressed, I'm going to put that down into the center. And then I'm going to set my piece of burlap down there as well. And because I was able to use the die, I can just pop it down there. And then it'll go along the cut edge. So I didn't have to worry about where I was putting my double-sided foam tape or anything like that. I covered the back of the flowers with some Stampin' Up! Dimensionals. And I'm going to kind of set that off to the side. And of course, it's got to come off the frame. Because again, I never do anything perfect. Got to have some of that movement going on there. So we have that set. Now we're going to, I keep looking at that frame. That's why my finger was tapping there. It was too white. It was too bright white. It was really sore looking in my eyes. It was hurting. So I'm just going over it with some vintage photo just to dull it down just a little bit. So the sentiment that I chose for this is "You are so loved." And I love that sentiment too. Her sentiments in Gina's kits are always beautiful. They kind of like hit the heartstrings. Oh, at least they did for me. So I stamped that onto a piece of scratch paper. And of course, yep, going to tear my paper. So I'm going to tear the edges of this because I want it to have the same jagged edges that the antique frames from Penny Black do as well. I'm pulling in my vintage photo and I'm going crazy with this. I want it to be heavy. I'm even going over all over the front. I want it to be aged, and I want it to be really dark along those edges. And then we're going to set that right in place there. That had the perfect spot for it. So we use some foam squares and some glue because it's going off the raised edge. I'm going to pull in my Spectrum Noir glitter pen, and I'm going to do the jar, and then I'm also going to do the sentiment. And I thought what was really cool when I went over the sentiment, it moved the ink because they're water reactive, of course, the Distress inks. So it really made it look aged, which is something that I just loved. And here are the cards that we made in part 1 from the Gina K Stamp TV kit. The next 5 will be coming soon. I hope you enjoyed this. If you did, hit the thumbs up. If you haven't already subscribed, please do so. We have so much going on here. If you have any questions, list them down below in the comment section, and all the products that I used will be listed in the description below. Now for my announcement. So, if everyone's curious, I don't know if you would be, but if you would be curious to actually see me, I encourage you to head over to Diana Trout's channel on YouTube. I will link that below as well. She has posted a video, and I had the awesome pleasure of meeting one of my followers who is right in my area. She posted a video titled Welcome to Open Studio February, and I had the awesome honor of being there and watching all the fun everybody did. I encourage you, please go to her channel. She is a beautiful artist and a beautiful person, and she does awesome mixed media. And you'll also get to see exactly what I look like. Always remember, everyone, be creative and never stop. Take care.